There are two very highly paid, or should I say overpaid, government bureaucrats in this country that should resign by the end of this week, or they should be sacked by our Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese. The first is Kevin 07, Kevin Rudd, our ambassador over there in Washington.
This is becoming hopeless.
And the second is our eSafety Commissioner, or as we know her, the eSafety Karen, Julie Inman Grant. But firstly, to Kevin Rudd.
Just fucking hopeless.
Here's a bloke that is already on a taxpayer-funded pension for life of around $300,000 that gets indexed every year, every single year for as long as Kevin is alive. That's his taxpayer-funded parliamentary pension. Now, on top of that, he's getting a double dip as being paid for our ambassador over there in the USA.
Tell them to cancel this meeting at 6 o'clock, will you? I'm going to have the fucking patience to do it.
Now, we don't know, that amount is not disclosed, but it's at least another $300,000 that Kevin pockets from that job, plus all the expenses that go with it, free accommodation, free travel, etc., etc., etc. Now, Kevin Rudd would have been a fantastic ambassador if the Democrats had won at the last election. If Kamala Harris had won that election, fantastic, let Kevin have that job. But the comments that Kevin Rudd has made, the comments that he has made against President Trump, rule him completely ineligible for the job. Just have a look at what he tweeted about Trump in the past. He described President Trump as the most destructive president in history. And he said, which I'm sure this line must have really offended President Trump. This is Rudd. He abuses Christianity, the church, the Bible, to justify violence. How can you possibly say those words and expect them to have a good or develop a good relationship with the US administration? And that's the whole point. The job in Washington of our ambassador is not to try and, as some crazy leftist say, oh, we must hold Trump to account. That's not the job. The job of our ambassador in Washington is to develop good relationships with all the current administration. We want our US ambassador to be able to pick the phone up and to be able to get through directly to the highest levels of the US government if there is some crisis. Kevin Rudd clearly cannot do that. Kevin Rudd is putting his own personal interests first and ahead of the nation.
Dad. And tell these dickheads in the embassy to just give me simple sentences.
But that's not the first time Kevin Rudd has done that. Remember what Kevin Rudd's from Labor Party, Christina Keneally, Kevin Rudd's own parliamentary colleague, said of Kevin Rudd that he's a psychopathic narcissist. Just have a listen to what Christina Keneally here says about Kevin Rudd.
He's a psychopathic narcissist, and that's not just my opinion. That is the opinion of a whole range of people who are currently sitting in the parliament.
And then you've got Wayne Swan. Wayne Swan is quoted as talking about Kevin Rudd. Now, Wayne Swan is one of the most senior Labor Party operatives you could get. He described Kevin Rudd as, quote, a man of great weakness. For too long, Kevin Rudd has been putting his own self-interests ahead of the broader Labor movement and the country as a whole. And yet Rudd is still doing that today. He cannot be effective as our ambassador in Australia. And this is costing Australia jobs. It's costing Australia wealth creation and income. We need an ambassador there that when President Trump is talking about the tariffs can get on the front foot, pick the phone up and argue the case forcefully that there should be no tariffs on Australian exports to the USA. We've got a fantastic case. The USA has a big trade surplus with us. We have a big trade deficit with the USA. We should be the last nation that they should be putting tariffs on. The US should be holding us up as an example of a country as a fair trading nation. That's the case that should be being made in the US today. But Kevin Rudd is incapable of doing it because of his previous comments about President Trump. He should be recalled immediately. But Albanese won't do that because Albanese, as a weak leader, would rather put his friendship with Kevin Rudd first and looking after Labor mates ahead of the nation. Now, if we had a half-decent opposition, they'd be on the front foot out calling for Kevin Rudd's resignation. But what have we got? We had Peter Dutton before the election campaign saying that he was quite comfortable with Kevin Rudd being our ambassador.
It's kind of a yes or no question. If you're elected, will you replace Kevin Rudd as ambassador?
It's not a yes or no answer that can be given. We have to have an ambassador who is in our country's best interests. Kevin obviously is an accomplished person as Prime Minister of our country.
This fucking language. He just complicates it so much, you know? How can anyone do this? You know what I mean? It's just...
And if he's the best person for the job, then he should stay in the job.
Traitor to the West. And he's now Australia's ambassador in Washington.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Would you take a phone call from him?
He won't be there long if that's the case. I don't know much about him. I heard he was a little bit nasty. I hear he's not the brightest bulb.
Just fucking hopeless. I fucked up the last word.
And if he's the best person for the job, then he should stay in the job. My instinct would be to leave him in the job.
What a hopeless state of affairs. When it comes to Rudd, we don't even have a decent opposition that can try and hold them to account.
This is becoming hopeless. Just fucking hopeless.
And secondly, the other government bureaucrat that should either resign or be sacked is our eSafety Commissioner. Now, firstly, we see from the eSafety Commission's annual report in 2023-2024 that the eSafety Commissioner, Julie Inman Grant, was on a taxpayer-funded salary of, wait for it, $457,844. That would have made her one of the highest paid bureaucrats anywhere in the world. And you can bet your bottom dollar, that's 23-24 salary. You can bet your bottom dollar that now is getting close upwards of $500,000 that she is directly collecting from taxpayers, let alone all her travel expenses, the legal bills that she incurs, etc., 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 etc. And what's she giving us for that money? Well, firstly, she's just lost the third case in a row, this case against Billboard Chris, where she tried to work out that, here we are, in my good friend George Christensen's words, he described her as an Australian government official trying to erase a foreign citizen's opinion from the internet. Now, she's lost that case. She's lost that case before here in Australian court, and they've admitted the cost is $66,000. I bet you it cost a lot more in legal fees, but that's what they're admitting to. Why should taxpayers have to fund $66,000 in legal expenses because our eSafety Commissioner thought that she could erase a foreign citizen's opinion from the internet? This is just completely out of control. I said this is the third case she's lost in the row. And then there's her demand, or not demand, her claim or her pressuring the government to include this under 16's so-called age identification requirements to apply to YouTube. So here she wants to ban under 16-year-olds from watching any YouTube videos. Now, look, some of the YouTube videos might be a bit frivolous, but a lot of those YouTube videos are highly educational. I'm sure there's a lot of kids out there that get, decent education and decent learning experiences from watching YouTube videos. Now, this Inman Grant woman, she wants to ban that from happening. And why does she want to do this? Because she wants to force compliance of almost all Australians that log on to the internet. And they said something like 80% of Australians access YouTube. She wants us all to have some form of digital, biometric, government-approved ID before we can log on. This has got nothing to do with stopping, protecting children from what's on YouTube videos. This is all about control and compliance and monitoring and regulation. This woman is completely unfit in this position. Those issues alone are enough to ensure that eSafety Karen is sacked by Albanese. But then it gets worse. We've just had this week released from the US House Judiciary Committee. It's a whole lengthy report here. You can download it off the internet. All right, it's titled Exporting Censorship, How GARM's Advertising Cartel Helped Corporations Conclude with Foreign Governments to Silence American Speech. Now, those foreign governments that are referred to adversely in this report by the powerful US House Judiciary Committee, it's not Iraq or Iran or North Korea, it's Australia. We are being adversely named in this report, and it is all because of the handiwork of our eSafety Karen. She is named in this report extensively. I'll just read through some of the paragraphs in this report to give you some idea of how this woman is completely unfit for this job, is damaging Australia's reputation, and should be gone tomorrow. First, he says here, in exercising the adequacy and sufficiency of existing US antitrust laws, the committee, that's the House Judiciary Committee, opened an investigation into the World Federation of Advertisers and its Global Alliance for Responsible Media, called GARM, which is Global Alliance for Responsible Media. That's the acronym GARM initiative. Through this oversight, the committee uncovered evidence that some of the world's largest companies concluded through GARM to control online content that censored disfavoured speech. Now, wherever around the world, when you're talking about censoring speech, you can bet eSafety Karen has got something to do with it somewhere. It goes on, the third paragraph. It says here, after a year-long investigation, the committee released an initial report in July 2024 detailing GARM's collusive conduct and the cartel's actions to restrain the types of content available to consumers online. Following the release of the committee's report, groups harmed by GARM's collusive actions filed a lawsuit against the initiative. In August 2024, GARM announced that it would cease all operations effective immediately. And it goes on here, documents and communications produced to the committee show that, again, it says here, in Australia, eSafety Commissioner Julie Inman Grant relied on GARM to inform her, quote, engagement with Twitter regulatory decisions, end quote, highlighting GARM's, quote, significant collective power in helping to hold platforms to account, end quote. In another message on that email thread, GARM's initiative lead and co-founder, Robert Rakovitz, stated that silencing President Trump was his main thing, likening President Trump's rhetoric to a contagion that he must contain to protect infection overall. So here is a bloke, this Rakovitz, that wanted to silence President Trump, wanted to censor his free speech. Now this is our eSafety Commissioner. This is exactly what she wanted. She's got her on the record here. She couldn't help herself. The same day after or a few days after President Trump survived that assassination attempt, she was on the public record saying that how she wanted to see President Trump censored. What a case of TDS.
During his presidency, Donald Trump not only savagely abused foes online with impunity, but was identified as a major superspreader of mis and disinformation. However, his online audience was so sizable and his content went so viral that none of the major platforms suspended him for repeated policy violations, making excuses for vaguely worded exceptions for public figures.
And then there's a whole special section here in this report, again adversely mentioning the eSafety Commissioner. And it says here, and I'll read from this part here, okay. It says, under the new Online Safety Act, the Commissioner is empowered, this is to, quote, regulate illegal and restricted content no matter where it's hosted. Australia's current eSafety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, has used the law to regulate so-called, quote, harmful conduct and demand that social media platforms remove content globally, including content that would otherwise be accessible to citizens of the United States. So here we have the eSafety Commissioner colluding with this illegal cartel called GARM to try and get around the First Amendment of the USA that prohibits government from interfering in free speech. It goes on. In particular, Commissioner Grant has engaged in an aggressive regulatory campaign against Twitter. In April 2024, Commissioner Grant ordered Twitter to remove certain content from its platform, including content surrounding the stabbing of an Australian bishop. In response to this order, Twitter blocked the content from being shown to its Australian users. Now, that should have never occurred. Right? What she was doing when she went out and created all this publicity, which actually made more people want to watch the video, what he called the Streisand effect, right? Deciding Australians are not, we're not intelligent enough or grown up enough to watch this, and she's going to work out what we can and cannot say. And it doesn't work anyway, because as quick as you censor one platform, one page, someone else puts it up. So it's completely pointless what she was trying to do anyway. Right? The report goes on. However, Commissioner Grant demanded that Twitter block the content from being shown to all Twitter users globally, a position that even the victim of the attack opposed. Ultimately, an Australian court ruled against Commissioner Grant and her request to keep the material blocked from all Twitter users. During the course of the proceedings, Twitter argued that global takedown requests set a dangerous precedent whereby one country's regulator can dictate what citizens of another country are allowed to view online. So there you have it. This eSafety Commissioner here in Australia, this eSafety Karen, she is trying to use her regulatory powers to dictate what Americans can view online. Something that she couldn't do in the USA because of the protections of their First Amendment. So she's trying to do that from Australia, reach into the USA and control freedom of speech over there. And she was doing so colluding with this illegal cartel called GARM. And then this US House Judiciary Committee report has Exhibit 7, which is here. And it's the email chain from this Robert Rakovitz character and the Australian eSafety Commissioner in here. And there's some very, when you read through, these people, these bureaucrats, completely and utterly out of control. Just take some of the quotes that she said here in this. This is an email from eSafety Karen. We'll be grateful if GARM can keep us updated on how Twitter responds and share any information so we can take into account our engagement and regulatory decisions. So she is asking this illegal cartel to keep her up to date with how she enforces Australian law. Seriously. This woman has to go. She is completely out of control. She is trying to regulate free speech. She is an anti-free speech zealot. She's shown examples. She's lost 3 court cases in a row. She's trying to censor everyone. She's trying to censor YouTube and shut that down for under 16-year-olds to make sure all Australians comply with her digital ID scheme. And now she's been named adversely in this report from the US House Judiciary Committee. What else does this woman have to do to be sacked from this job that she's being paid almost $500,000 Australian dollars for? It is simply not good enough. But again, we here in Australia are a one-party state. We should have the opposition out there screaming for this woman's resignation, highlighting her threat to free speech. But instead, what do we have? We had the previous opposition leader, Peter Dutton, before the last election, stand up in Parliament and tell us what a wonderful job this woman was doing, one of the finest bureaucrats in the country. And then we had the new opposition leader, Susan Ley, expressing her great support for this woman and the wonderful work that Susan Ley said she was doing. Unfortunately, we've become a one-party state here. The opposition Liberal Party are more just a Labor light. They won't say anything. It's up to groups like people like George Christensen, Topher Field, and myself here on this platform of the Australian Foundation for Economic Education, and other people online are the only ones. We are the ones now doing the work of the opposition, because we have no opposition in this country. We just have these weak so-called Liberal politicians that go along and want to suck up to what Labor are doing. It's absolutely pathetic. So if you're watching online, try and subscribe to this channel. Try and support us and other good people, I said, like George Christensen, Topher Field, and many others that are doing the opposition's work and holding both Kevin Rudd and the eSafety Commissioner to account. Both of them need to go. Both of them should resign. And Albanese should be sacking both of them if they don't.